Keep it, Mr. Sadat. Thank you very much.
At the height of its power, when the smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air after the October War, President Sadat made a move no one could have ever imagined. Instead of continuing down the path of war and confrontation, he put on his elegant suit, packed his bag, and boarded a plane straight to Tel Aviv itself. The first Arab leader to ever set foot in the heart of Israel and speak before the Knesset. The visit, which was described at the time as the shock, was the spark that ignited a series of secret negotiations between Sadat and Begin under the supervision of President Carter in an isolated camp in the United States. Talks that would lead to an agreement that changed the region forever. This was the beginning of the Egyptian-Israeli peace story, a story written with sweat, tears, and political pressure like never before. So, my dear viewer, if you want to know more about Sadat's negotiations with Israel, make sure to watch today's video until the end. But before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Before the Camp David negotiations even began, Sadat believed that this time the battle wouldn't be fought with rifles, but with intellect and diplomacy. His goal was clear from the very beginning: to win over the United States, because without America, there could be no real leverage over Israel. His plan was simple, yet incredibly clever. Egypt would present an offer of peace, and in either case, it would be a win. If Israel accepted, Egypt would regain its land peacefully. And if it refused, the whole world would see that Egypt was the one seeking peace, while Israel was the one turning it down. Sadat also made one thing clear from day one: not a single inch of Egyptian land would be given up. Before traveling to America, he sat down with one of his closest advisors, Dr. Osama al-Baz, and told him, "Write me the document we'll present at the negotiations." Al-Baz drafted the Egyptian peace proposal, and Sadat personally handed it to US President Jimmy Carter at the very first official session. As Carter read through the paper, his expression began to change, because Egypt's plan, my friend, was bold, almost shocking. It demanded a full Israeli withdrawal from Sinai, the dismantling of all settlements in the occupied territories, compensation for the oil that had been seized, and the establishment of a Palestinian state within 5 years. And the proposal didn't stop there. It also called for Israel to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Carter looked at Sadat and said, "I can't take this to Begin. The man just came back from psychological treatment in Switzerland. He's not ready to even see a document like this." Sadat replied confidently, "I'm ready to officially recognize Israel, and I'll even convince the Palestinians to accept temporary self-rule until they can declare their own state." But Carter objected, especially to the idea of complete withdrawal and dismantling settlements. That's when Sadat's temper flared, and he delivered his now famous line, "My land is not for sale, and it's non-negotiable. As for any other guarantees for Israel," he said, "I can accept them." Declassified US documents about the Camp David negotiations between Egypt and Israel, my friend, reveal incredibly fascinating behind-the-scenes details. They show that Sadat entered the talks with a comprehensive, well-thought-out plan, including both military and political alternatives in case the negotiations failed. This wasn't just a political gamble, as some believed. Intelligence reports at the time indicated that Sadat needed a tangible achievement from the summit, something he could present to the Egyptian people and to the Arab world, whether it was a direct Israeli promise to withdraw from the occupied territories or a strong American guarantee supporting Egypt's stance. Meanwhile, Menachem Begin, more flexible than he appeared, was willing to prolong the negotiations to show Washington that he was a man of peace. But the most striking revelation from those documents was that Sadat had prepared backup scenarios, including the possibility of a limited military action if the talks collapsed. For instance, violating the restricted armament zone east of the canal, or moving his forces closer to the front lines to pressure the United States into intervening and forcing a solution on Israel. Sadat knew exactly what he was doing. Every move was calculated, and the mere threat of military action could have been his final card to play. The documents also revealed that a failure at Camp David would have damaged America's image in the Middle East and strengthened Soviet influence, especially in Syria and Lebanon. A collapse of the summit could have created a political vacuum that Moscow would quickly exploit to restore the balance of power against Washington. On the other hand, Israel believed that if the negotiations failed, it might actually enhance Begin's image as a tough leader. But if he appeared to be the reason for the collapse, public opinion could turn sharply against him and trigger divisions within his own government. As for Sadat, U.S. intelligence assessed that even if he failed to reach an agreement, he would likely seek reconciliation with moderate Arab states like Saudi Arabia and Jordan to reduce his isolation, or even take limited military action as a symbolic move to create a new reality on the ground. In another surprise, the documents revealed that the Saudis were ready to use the oil weapon if the negotiations failed, to pressure Washington into forcing a solution on Israel rather than letting another war erupt. The documents also describe the reactions after the signing. Most Israelis supported the Camp David Accords and agreed to give up the Sinai settlements in exchange for peace with Egypt. Begin, Moshe Dayan, and Ezer Weizman saw their popularity skyrocket after the signing. But in the Arab world, things were far more divided. Syria, Algeria, Libya, and the PLO held a summit in Damascus to condemn the agreement. Even President Assad, however, was cautious. He knew that opposing Sadat too harshly could leave him politically isolated in the region. That night, after the heated discussions, Carter's secretary organized a small dinner to ease the tension. There, a new idea, a backup plan, was suggested to Sadat. Sadat stayed silent, but his advisor, Osama al-Baz, was deeply thoughtful. The next morning, when Sadat didn't go out for his usual walk, Carter panicked. He called al-Baz asking, "Is the president ill?" Security was sent to check, but Sadat was fine. Soon after, Carter received reports from U.S. intelligence stating that Osama al-Baz was Sadat's mind, the key to understanding him. From that moment, Carter decided to meet with al-Baz alone. After 2 separate meetings, they began outlining the framework of the peace agreement. Only Sadat's final approval remained. When the last meeting was scheduled, Sadat insisted that al-Baz attend. The Israelis and Americans objected, so Sadat said he'll sit quietly just to take notes. But what they didn't know was that Sadat and al-Baz had a secret code between them. If al-Baz wrote with his pen, it meant the proposal was acceptable. If he held the pen without writing, Sadat would ask for more time, and if he put the pen down completely, Sadat would reject the offer. As Sadat watched closely, he saw al-Baz begin to write, and he knew the path was open. And from that moment, the peace agreement was born, the one that restored Egypt's land and opened the door to Palestinian self-rule for the first time. But on the day of the signing at the White House, Sadat was surprised to see Palestinian protests outside the gates. When he delivered his speech, he noticed that 2 full pages, the ones about the Palestinian cause, were missing. Later, al-Baz whispered, "Mr. President, you forgot the 2 pages." Sadat smiled and said, "The phones or the secretary must have misplaced them." But the truth was, Sadat had deliberately left them out. He wanted to speak from the heart, not the paper. Months later, in a friendly talk with Albaz, Sadat laughed and said, "Remember Osama, when the Palestinians were shouting at me? I just wanted to tell them to calm down. But when they cursed me, I tossed those 2 pages under the podium. Maybe they'll learn some manners." In the end, Sadat chose to bear the criticism and the judgment of history rather than let Egypt sink again into a never-ending cycle of war. He believed the real battle was not just fought with guns, but with wisdom, that reclaiming the land was far greater than clinging to empty slogans. He faced the outcome, the accusations, the isolation, the anger, because deep down, he knew Camp David was a turning point. It was a bold step that redrew the Arab world's path in dealing with Israel, a path full of calculations, risks, and sacrifices, but one that brought back Sinai and forced the world to see leadership and courage in a whole new light.